Hello again, Shelley Tender here, Interpretive Services Manager for Medina County Park District, and I'm back again at Hubbard Valley for our weekly wildflower report. Now last week when we were here, the forest floor was starting to really green up and we saw a number of cool ephemerals blooming, including Harbinger of Spring, Hepatica, Spring Beauty, Purple Cress, Bloodroot, and we even saw some cutleaf toothwort starting to open and some trout lilies and some trilliums that were beginning to bloom. So let's take another walk along our trails here at Hubbard Valley and see what's popping up today. You can see what a difference 1 week makes, especially with the nice warm sunny days we had this past week, followed by some of the rain. The forest floor just continues to green up. Everything is growing. And we have a lot more color in the forms of our spring ephemerals than we did last week. So here's our cutleaf toothwort that we saw last week, but I just wanted to give you another quick look to see how it looks in the sun when it's fully open. And you can see this one is white. Again, this is a really common spring ephemeral you can find in most parks, most of our parks, other parks around the area. So the trout lilies that we saw last week that were just having their flower buds formed and not open yet are pretty consistently blooming along the trail here. You can see that they're opened up, and what's kind of cool is if you look at the inside of the flower, those long brown things are called the stamens. And this is the part of the flower that creates that pollen needed to reproduce. And what I'm looking for today are some of those little native bees that we also talked about last week. The trout lily has a specialist bee that will visit it. It's called a Trout Lily miner, a little mining bee. And this little bee will visit other flowers to get food for itself. But in order to gather food for its young, after they hatch from their eggs in their larval stage, they need food to eat. And the adults provision the food from gathering pollen. The only food that their young will eat is pollen from the trout lily. Well, look at what we have here. It's the white trout lily. Awesome. Spring beauties are really showcasing themselves today. Our large flowered trilliums are not quite ready yet. I was really hoping that we'd find a couple in bloom, but I'm thinking next week we should have some success. Here we have a yellow violet. It is just one of many different species of violets that we have here at Hubbard Valley Park. There are over 900 species of violets worldwide and dozens of different types of violets in Ohio. They range in color from yellow to white to purple, light blue. Some are variegated. This is a pretty common one. Other violets will start to bloom here soon. Violets have these heart-shaped leaves. They grow in little clumps because they can reproduce by both runners and seeds. So you often find them in your yard or in your garden beds. These are great flowers to keep, make excellent ground covers. They're very pretty and dainty and delicate. And if you have them in your yard and you run them over with the mower, they don't seem to mind and they pop back up again next year. This is the only one I've seen so far today, but where there is one, there are more to follow. Quirky little Dutchman's breeches are now in bloom. This plant is a member of the Dicentra family, which includes another spring ephemeral called Squirrel Corn, which we have not seen yet today, but hopefully will. In my experience, the Dutchman's breeches tend to bloom first, with the Squirrel Corn following shortly thereafter. It's also related to a common yard plant that people love called bleeding heart. It gets its name from the unique flower head, which resembles a pair of breeches or short pants hanging on a clothesline, like hanging upside down from a clothesline to dry. So that's where that name comes from. While a number of insects may use Dutchman's breeches as a food source, one of the insects that most effectively pollinates it is the bumblebee, and it's because they have a pretty long proboscis that allows their tongue to reach down in to get those nectar resources, and so they spend more time at the flower entrance gathering pollen and then transferring it from flower to flower. There are insects that will cheat the system, and to get to those nectar resources they may chew holes at the ends of those spurs and gain entrance that way, and then bypass the reproductive part of the flower altogether. So they're not really helping the flower out any, they're just getting the food that they need. This is the squirrel corn that I mentioned earlier, very similar to the Dutchman's breeches. It is just now blooming, so I think we'll take a closer look at this one when we come back next week. It should be in full bloom. So not in bloom yet. This is one we'll be watching over the next couple of weeks. This little umbrella looking type plant is called a mayapple. When they're fully up, they look more like an umbrella that's open. Right now they kind of look like an umbrella that's closed. They'll have a little flower that will hang below the leaves, which again we'll see in just a couple of weeks. But last week they weren't even poking up on the floor, and I see a bunch of them today. So stay tuned. We'll talk more about May apples when they start to bloom.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Join me again next week as we take another walk at Hubbard Valley to see what's blooming. Bye-bye.